prime thing is you have to win.
Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. Enough is enough.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. I'm Ted Wynn. That's Tashan Reed. That's Vic Tafer, and we're going to preview the Buccaneers game today. Two teams headed opposite directions. The Raiders are headed towards what they hope is going to be a top 3 pick. The Buccaneers look like they are headed to the playoffs. They are a team that's playing very well offensively, at least. But we'll get into it. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Yeah, pretty good. We had a nice little break for the holiday. Got back home, went to St. Louis, saw the great game in Kansas City that we all expected, and now we're back to it.
Back to it. All right, let's start off with injury news. Who practiced? Who didn't practice? Who are we expecting? What's going on?
The big one, I guess, but it's not really that big a deal. Aiden O'Connell did not practice today. He's sick, but I think he'll be fine for Sunday. And then Nate Hobbs is still out. And who else did I want to sign? Who am I forgetting?
Those few guys, Zamir White didn't practice, quad injury. Jacoby Myers didn't practice today due to an ankle injury. That's one to watch for sure. Alexander Madison, he's been a limited practice participant this week with ankle injury, and then tight end Justin Short didn't practice with a back injury. But yeah, so they have 3 starters that didn't practice today. We think Aiden O'Connell will be fine, and it's more of a question mark about Nate Hobbs and Jacoby Myers if they're going to be able to go, and then Madison's kind of interesting just because it didn't happen the last couple of weeks, but if he's able to get back out there, interesting to see how they handle the running back room with the emergence of Sincere McCormick. Usually the Raiders are the most injured team in almost every game they play, but the Bucs have been really banged up. I mean, linebacker KJ Britt didn't practice today. Safety Mike Edwards didn't practice. Receiver Mike Evans, cornerback Troy Hill, running back Bucky Urban, offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs, outside linebacker Anthony Nelson was limited. Receiver Trey Palmer was limited. Tyke Smith was limited. Joe Tryon, Shank was limited. So the Bucs are injured as hell. So we got an injured bowl this week. It looks like we'll see if either team's able to get more healthy. Obviously, they still have one more day of practice left to see if guys can get back out there and at least get questionable to play on Sunday. But most likely, both teams will be missing a couple starters at least when they meet on Sunday.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers for the Raiders will be big because he's been awesome ever since Devontae Adams been hurt. He's been putting a lot of the offense on his back, getting a ton of receptions, and really taking advantage of a lot of the one-on-one coverage because of Brock Bowers. And if Aidan O'Connell doesn't play because he's sick, I think a lot of the conspiracy theorists are going to come out of the woodwork and suspect that this might have something to do with the tankathon going on. But speaking of Aidan O'Connell, what do you guys think? He played at a very high level against Kansas City in Kansas City. Played much better than he did last year when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs when he barely had to pass the ball. This game was basically on his back, and he performed well. You guys think he can keep this up against a Bucs secondary that isn't that good this year?
Yeah, it'd be fun to watch how he does. I mean, I think you mentioned last week, he had 5 deep passes, like that traveled to more than 20 yards in the air. It's kind of a career high for him. So definitely more aggressive. I think we'll see that can also be a plan this week. But for him, his confidence definitely is growing. And despite the way the game ended, he played pretty well in the second half, made some big time throws, and he drove the team down the field when they had to before that last play. But I think he's looking for something to build off of. And this, like you mentioned, the Bucs defense is not great against the pass, so it might be a chance for him to kind of get this thing rolling a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the Bucs defense has been pretty leaky all season long, so I think he'd be in position to have another good performance. Obviously, the status of Jacoby Myers is going to factor into that because, as Ted said, he's been pretty instrumental in their offensive success the last couple of weeks. So losing him would be a big blow and make it easier for the Bucs to focus in on Brock Bowers. He's obviously their number one option, but I think that's freed up Myers and even Trey Tucker last week on a touchdown pass to make some plays. And I think bigger picture for Aiden O'Connell, these last 5 games is really just an audition to be a part of the quarterback competition next year. I don't really think there's anything he could do within these last few games to you know, make it to where the Raiders don't explore their options at quarterback. Like I think that'd be a poor move by the franchise. Like they're going to evaluate their options, whether that's veterans via free agency or trade, or looking at quarterback options in the draft, depending on when they finish record rise. So it's going to be some sort of a competition, but if he plays well down the stretch, I think he'll show enough to where the Raiders don't necessarily have to go sign, let's say, a veteran stopgap option this offseason. You know, if he plays well enough, then you can just focus in on the draft and save that $7-8 million to use elsewhere.
Yeah, you don't have to spend $10 million on Gardner Minshew if he plays well. But what if he passes for over 300 yards every game and has 2 touchdowns, limits the turnovers? Is there a world where he plays well enough to where the Raiders punt on drafting a quarterback if they don't feel like they're strongly in love with anyone in the top five?
You don't have to draft one, I guess, in the first round, but you still got to draft one at some point, or sign a guy. I don't know if Sam Darnold's an option, but sign a guy who can come in and at least compete for the job. So I don't think it matters what Aiden does the rest of the way. He's not going to win this job for next year. In those last 5 weeks, I think they'll bring somebody in. We may both, maybe both a draft pick and a veteran guy, but clearly they know quarterback's still a big need, even with Aiden, in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think them passing on a quarterback would really have anything to do with Aiden O'Connell. Like, again, I don't really think there's anything. Even if he plays lights out the rest of the year, I still think you need to explore your options to draft a quarterback or add some type of quarterback. But there is a world where I think they look at this draft class and they don't think that there's a quarterback worth taking high in the draft. It's a pretty polarizing class. The people talk about it for months now, but there's no consensus, and teams are all over the place. And so maybe Tom Telesco evaluates these guys and thinks there's not a guy worth taking in the first round, which is a plausible outcome. And if that's the case, then maybe then they stick with O'Connell. But I don't think it's really going to be based on his performance as much as it is their evaluation of the quarterback class once we get into the college offseason scouting cycle.
Not that I believe that. It's just something I see floating around, Raiders Twitter that thought we needed to address. But speaking of players that are performing well, let's talk about Sincere McCormick, who looked really good. I mean, we kind of talked about in the past. He's the best pure runner the Raiders have. I don't think it's close. I mean, I thought he was the best, but after the game against the Chiefs, where he showed vision, he showed quickness, he was able to break tackles. I just don't think that there's a back close to what he can do as a runner. I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we started out. I think he has 4 runs of 10+ yards this year, which is I think Madison's got a lot more carries when he has 5, and that's more than the other guys have. So I think he's shown he can get to that second level pretty quickly. He's decisive with the ball, and I think maybe part of it also is that the O line was the first time they had an O line play for like a long. I think it's the third game in a row they'll play together, these 5 guys. So that's part of it. But yeah, I think he definitely has been very aggressive and hitting that hole hard. And like Sean mentioned earlier, I'm very curious about Madison when he's back, how they plan to approach that as far as the mix goes with him. And even Abdullah's earned, I think, some carries now in the last few weeks. So what they do with those 3 guys going forward, I think, will be very interesting.
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, I think, it's not like it's a ton of, I guess, competition to be the best runner on the team, given how much the running backs have struggled this year. But in his limited sample size, it's definitely looked a lot different with him. And I think, he has this really decisive running style where he, is looking to make one cut and get vertical. And it seems to make a pretty big difference. The offensive line also having the continuity of having the same group together for 4 games in a row certainly helps. And the job that Joe Philbin has done as interim offensive line coach. But Sincere McCormick deserves credit nonetheless, and it sounds like this week he's going to get more opportunities. He cracked double-digit carries last week, but it was still relatively low. And earlier this week, Antonio Pierce said he's hoping to get that number up this week. So it looks like he'll have more volume. I did a story on him at the Athletic today, and talked to him in the locker room for a bit. And he's had a pretty interesting journey. He played at UTSA and set a bunch of records there, but he was an undersized guy coming out of college and didn't get drafted, and signed with the Raiders as a UDFA a couple years ago. But he actually tore his ACL before like rookie or mandatory minicamp even started in May, and so he was pretty much on the shelf his whole rookie year. Last year, he was pretty much just stuck on the practice squad. They didn't really need him, given they had Josh Jacobs and Zamir White was playing well, and took a couple more injuries this year for him to get a shot. But he's taken advantage of it so far, and he's been rolling.
Yeah, and to me, what he's shown is a little bit more real than what White did last year. Because one, he there's vision. You see the vision. He's finding holes. and he's anticipating holes opening up, and there's a little bit more lateral quickness. He's not just he is a one cut runner, but he's not reliant on just hoping that one cut is there, and if it's not there, he's kind of stuck. And he's shown a little bit more wiggle. Like he could break a few more tackles. I think I want to see if he has some breakaway speed. I want to see how he does in passing situations a little bit more, and if he can hold up. Um, we're taking some more punishment, some more carries. So, I mean, if I were the Raiders, I would definitely um, give him a lot heavier workload and see what they have in him. I mean, it's what else are they playing for right now besides really evaluating some of their young players? And maybe he's a piece they could add to this young offense that they have with the offensive line, Brock Bowers, and maybe Sincere McCormick could be one of the core guys in the future. We'll see. All right, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Just Chason has helped spark the pass rush a little bit. Do you guys want to talk about Chason a little bit?
Yeah, he's been good. We got a story coming up tomorrow in Athletic about him, and just the guy that kind of picked up off the scrap heap, a former first round pick, had 4 years in Jacksonville. And I think, you look at that Jacksonville run, his first 3 years, he had three different head coaches and three different defensive coordinators, which is pretty amazing. I've never heard of that. 3 for 3. And I think he also had some injuries. So just never found his footing there. I think he clearly has the traits you look for in a guy on the edge. Like he's, big, fast, can bend. Those are the big three things. Hands were not great, but he's gotten better over the years. I thought he made some nice hand play in his sacks on Friday. So I think he's a guy who, sometimes first round picks take a while. I think he's fit in well, mentality wise. He's a hardworking guy. He's very humble. He definitely knows he's a first round pick who didn't make it. I think he has definitely something to prove. But a nice piece of the puzzle. I think part of that matchup last week he had 1.5 sacks, and you could argue maybe he should have had 2.5. They changed one afterwards, but he was also going against a guy that tackle for the Chiefs was not very good. So I don't want to throw Caleb on a parade right now, but definitely a guy who's coming on, and they need him. They need a guy to do that on the outside with Kuntz out and Wilkins out inside. So he's definitely helped to fill a void.
Yeah, let's call a spade a spade. That left tackle, I think his name is Morris, was
Yeah,
probably one of the worst left tackles in the league, if not the worst. I mean, I've never seen Patrick Mahomes call out a player, but he was pissed, and that's a bad sign. But still, he had 2 sacks, and he's made plays throughout the year too. It's not like this is the only game where he's made plays. So if he could be a good rotational piece in the future for defensive line, that will have Malcolm Kuntz back, I think, if they re-sign him. Tyree Wilson has shown flashes. He flashed again against the Chiefs, even though he didn't play that many snaps. And kind of a similar situation with Chase On, where Tyree Wilson is a first round pick, and you expect him to play really well off the bat. But sometimes some players just take a little longer to develop. But when you get that first round pick tag on you, guys expect it right away, and sometimes that's just not realistic.
Yeah, and I mean they've needed a guy to step up all year with Colts being out, and Tyree Wilson has shown flashes of growth, but hasn't been consistent throughout the year. And Chase hasn't either. He's made some poor plays against the run and some penalties here and there, but they're trying to patch it together with that pass rush. And I mean that was probably the best game as an overall unit rushing against the Chiefs. Again, we have the caveat with the Chiefs left tackle situation, but it's not the first bad left tackle they played this season, I'm sure. So still got to give the guys credit for stepping up and having a solid performance. So see if they're able to continue that this week. I mean, going against a pretty prolific passing offense, or at least what's been one so far this year. So we'll see if they're able to keep it running.
Next topic is Scott Turner making a case to become full-time offensive coordinator.
I laugh because obviously I think the offense looks better. I guess you can say that when you watch, but they haven't scored 20 points yet under under the Turner. So I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves as far as how much better the offense is and how great the Turners have been. But so ideally, we mentioned his last 5 games, they actually have some improvement. They score some more points, but I think he's done some things that the players have appreciated. I think he's kind of had a good approach and a good game plan, but you still need more points for me, at least, before I'm talking about a full-time job next year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the offense has looked better, but again, it's they haven't been like prolific or anything like that. They had a really strong second half against the Chiefs, and it's definitely made strides from how it looked. With Luke Getzey. But the other part of it is this coaching staff making a decision about who the offensive coordinator is moving forward. We have to see how that all plays out as well. With the question of whether or not Antonio Pierce is going to keep his job and things of that nature. So I think it's still too early to say. We haven't really seen enough for one, but also we just got to see who's making that decision coming the off season. But it's been better, and so it's something to be proud of, I guess, if you're the Raiders.
They've looked a lot more efficient under Scott Turner. I agree the points hasn't been there, but their top three performances as far as success rate. Number one was the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I felt like a lot of that was in garbage time. But the next two were the Chiefs game at Kansas City and against Miami. And they also had the highest yards per play of the season against the Chiefs. So they've been more efficient. They've been able to move the ball a little bit more. But I agree, you want to see them score a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot up in the air. Like who knows if. But I do think if Antonio Pierce is going to be your coach next year, I think Scott Turner should get a look being your full-time offensive coordinator, especially if the offense continues to improve the way they are. All right. Tankathon update. Number one, still the Giants. Number two, Raiders. Number three, Jaguars. I don't think they're going to pick a quarterback, but they could trade the pick. Four, Patriots. They're not going to pick a quarterback. And five, Panthers. I mean, hey, Bryce Young has looked really good the last few weeks. So maybe they decide they're not going to pick a quarterback. That's all good news for the Raiders.
That's crazy with Bryce Young, how we all thought he was, dead duck. He looked really bad, and he got benched for Andy Dalton. But he's not only is he playing well, but he looked like he's having a good time. I watched the game last week. He's having fun out there and kind of getting the team kind of fired up, which is kind of a big part of, I think, your job as a young quarterback. That players have faith in you as far as being the guy to lead this going forward. So I think the Panthers are probably off the market for a quarterback at this point. So yeah, if the Raiders want one of these top guys, the odds are definitely much more in their favor than they were in last year's draft.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of right now, kind of edging out the Giants. I guess the biggest threat. I know that depending on where you look, the draft orders are a little different. Like if the season ended today, the Giants would have number one overall pick, and the Raiders would be two. But Tankathon has like a different formula that they use. But that's the big contender. Like I think those are the two teams in the top five right now that are no doubt taking quarterbacks, and so that'll ultimately determine whether the Raiders have a shot at getting the first signal caller off the board or not. I know that our draft analyst Dane Brugler had his latest mock draft come out earlier this week, and the Raiders ended up with the number two pick in that behind the Jaguars, and he had them taking Cam Ward out of Miami. I think I would probably go with Shadur Sanders. I know we've talked about this, but Cam Ward, he has a lot of physical talent. He has good size. He's not like the Anthony Richardson type of athlete, but he has good speed and athleticism to create time in the pocket. Pretty good arm. Just a raw guy. He's a guy that probably would be better off sitting to start his career, which maybe that's where somebody like Aiden O'Connell comes into the mix. If you can start him next year and eventually work your way to Cam Ward. But yeah, they should be in the mix for one, depending on how the rest of the season goes.
And the Giants will be starting your boy Drew Lock for foreseeable future. So I mean, it's going to be tough catching up to them with Drew Lock at the helm. No shade to Tashan's alma mater, but
It was a little shade. There was a little shade there. It was a little bit. I
It's
felt some
fine.
shade.
We got a lot of bad getters coming out of our school, man. We got Chase Daniel, we got Blaine Gabbert, Drew Lock. A lot of guys that made a lot of money without throwing a lot of passes, man. So yeah, that's what we're known for.
money making MVPs right there. All right, let's get into our game preview. What are we watching when the Raiders have the ball?
I think this run game is kind of it's still last in the league, but they've gotten a little better. We mentioned Sincere McCormick and Abdullah. I think they averaged 4.5 yards a carry last week. I think the O line's playing together, so you're looking for momentum. Just kind of keep that going against the Buccaneers this weekend. And the Buccaneers have a pretty good run defense. They're led by Vita Vea, who's 350 and just a great athlete, a guy who's been making plays for a while there, and he kind of plugs the middle up. So Be a good challenge for the Raiders to kind of get this thing, where they want it to be going into next year. So I think the run game for me is a big priority this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a better job last week against the Chiefs of getting the run game volume up in terms of the carries, but still probably some room to grow there. But particularly if Jacoby Myers can't play, I think this is going to be a game where they really need to lean heavily into the run game and give Sim McCormick some more carries and see what he can do. Particularly since this Bucks offense is so explosive and they've been putting up points pretty much against anybody. I don't think a shootout is really the type of game that the Raiders want to find themselves in against the Bucks, and so if you can control the clock and move the ball on the ground, I think that's probably their best approach in this one.
I know they don't want to be in a shootout, but I have a feeling to win this game, they're going to have to be in a shootout because that Bucks offense is playing really well, and this Bucks secondary is it's all right. It's actually it's not good. It's not good, but you're going to have to block up these blitzes. Todd Bowles is he sends those exotic blitzes. He's always top five in blitz rate. And it's going to test the Raiders' young offensive line. There's going to be a lot of inside blitzes and stunts that happen extremely quickly. They're going to have to process that and block them up. But if they're able to block them up, there's some big play opportunities against the secondary. Aidan O'Connell was very good against the blitz last week against the Chiefs, and Scott Turner drew up some nice designs to get Bowers deep, to get Trey Tucker deep. So yeah, it's going to be a big test for this young offensive line. If they could pass this test and they could sort out some of these pressures and get a hat on a hat, then I think the Raiders have a chance to move the ball. Running the ball wise, the Buccaneers have one of the better run defenses in the league. Vita Villa, that's going to be a matchup to watch. Vita Villa against Jackson Powers Johnson. Villa is obviously one of the best nose tackles in the league, strongest, most physical defensive lineman in the league. But the Raiders have had success on running plays where they're pulling guys from the backside, they're pulling guys from the front side. That's going to be a lot harder against the Buccaneers, who always stack the line of scrimmage because they want to run their sim pressures. They want to get those linebackers up on the line of scrimmage. It's harder to pull guys when there's a ton of guys at the line of scrimmage. So the Raiders have to be good at the zone running game. They're going to have to run zone, outside zone, inside zone, whatever it is, and try to create some gashes that way. They're not going to be able to get some big pullers outside, like on McCormick's big run when they pull a couple guards outside and um, open up a lane for them. Then I don't think they're going to have those types of plays available to them in this play in this game. So I think it's going to be a test for the Raiders, but I think there's opportunities if they are on the same page. All right, defensively, what are we watching out for?
Defensively, I know Mike Evans has been banged up this week, but I assume he'll play on Sunday. I think especially when you look at the matchup, he's going against probably a rookie in the Cameron Richardson, who I think is, we've talked about him in the past a few weeks, how he's kind of, got trial by fire. He's kind of, given up some plays, also made some plays, but it's tough for a rookie in this league at cornerback to kind of step in and cover a guy like Mike Evans. And it kind of has to be him because I think Mike Evans is way too big for Jack Jones. So I think that would be the matchup. I'm sure the Bucks are circling on their board, and one the Raiders have to maybe help them out a little bit with some double coverage and some different looks on defense. But for me, that's a big matchup. How do you cover Mike Evans in this game on Sunday, and with who?
Yeah, I want to see if the Raiders are able to slow down Bucks running back Bucky Irving, who also didn't practice the last couple of days due to hip and back injuries. But the Raiders have gotten better at stopping the run as the season has gone on. I thought last week they did a pretty good job, in particular against the Chiefs and slowing them down with Isaiah Pacheco coming back. And but Bucky Irvin's been really good, not just running the ball, but also as a pass catcher. And if he does end up playing in this one, if they're able to corral him and make the Bucks get one dimensional, that could help their efforts. I know, Baker Mayfield's been, having a great year, dropping back and passing as well. But, obviously, if they get both those phases of the game rolling, then the Raiders will really be in trouble. So, interested to see if they're able to, bottle up that run game with Bucky Irvin.
Yeah, Bucky Irvin being able to play is a big deal. I mean, he's really transformed this Bucks run game. Rashad Whiteside, he's a good back, but he's more of a kind of a gadget back, pass catcher type of guy. But Bucky Irvin really gives them that downhill back that could do a little bit of everything. And he's really transformed this Bucks rush offense. And Liam Cohen's doing a lot of interesting things in a run game. This is a really creative run scheme. Um, So yeah, the Raiders have been better, but there's going to be a challenge dealing with the motion, the fakes they do, some run concepts you just don't see from a lot of other teams. And then you have to deal with the passing game. Like Vic said, I don't think there's a guy on this team that could cover Mike Evans. Um, Richardson is a rookie, and he's way too big for Jack Jones. So um, I would expect Mike Evans to have a big game unless they really do a job of they really focus on double covering him and putting a safety to a side. But that's tough to do if you're going to have to worry about the run game as well. And the Raiders were pretty bad against Travis Kelsey last week. They started doubling him a little bit more in the second half, but anytime he had one-on-one coverage, he pretty much ate it up. And Kate Otten is not Kelsey level, but he could be a pretty productive tight end whenever they call plays for him. So that's something to watch out for as well. This is a tough matchup for the Raiders defense. I mean, the Bucs offense has been one of the better offenses in the league, which is why I think to win this game it's going to be. I think it's going to have to be a bit of a shootout. But I mean, they could surprise. Well, the Raiders defense. They play hard, but yeah, I just think this is going to be it's going to have to be a high scoring game.
It's gonna
All
be
right.
harder to get pressure than it was last week. Last week, we talked about the Chiefs tackles weren't very good, but the Bucs line's gotten better and they got some guys back. So I think that's gonna be a tough challenge for guys like Caleb Vaughn and Max Crosby and Tyree to get some pressure on Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a automatic swing gate on the left side like last week. It's gonna be a little tougher to get pressure against Tristan Wirfs, one of the best tackles in the game. Um, all right, let's talk about matchups of the game. What matchups are we looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I know that Max Crosby usually rushes from the defensive left, which is the offensive right, but whenever he is matched up against Tristan Wirfs, I think that'll be a pretty cool matchup to watch if Wirfs does play because he's injured as well. But we've talked about it. I know Max had a sack last week. That was a little bit, kind of looked like it was Chase on sack a little bit to me, but I gave it to Max. But he hasn't had one of those Max Crosby games in quite some time, and this Bucks offensive line has been really good in pass protection. I think they have the lowest pressure rate in the league right now, and if you give Baker Mayfield a lot of time to throw, he's going to pick you apart in this one, particularly with the secondary still being shorthanded. And so I think Max Crosby versus whoever is kind of the matchup of the game for the Raiders, and he didn't have a big one.
He's mine earlier. I'm going with Jackson Powers Johnson against Vita Vea inside. I think Jackson's. I think he's 328, so he's given up about 25 pounds to Vita. I think he's done a good job, in pass pro. I think in a short time at center, but this is definitely a challenge on another level. I'm gonna have to do some double teams and stuff to help him out a little bit inside. But yeah, they got to get that guy accounted for. I think Jackson will be a big thing on his plate this week. So I'm curious how the rookie does against one of the better D tackles in the NFL.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun matchup to watch because he's such a passionate player, and you could tell he loves the physicality. But this is gonna be another level. This is gonna be one of the best physical defensive nose tackles in the league. I'm gonna cheat a little bit and say it's gonna be the Raiders' offensive line against Todd Bowles. I just want to see if they can handle some of these pressures and twists and all the tricky stuff he does. Yeah, I mean, if they can handle it, I mean, it's going to be a big step in the right direction, and it'll give the Raiders a chance to really put some points on the board and compete in this game. All right, let's talk about X factors.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've used him a lot this season, but I think I'll go with Trey Tucker. I think particularly with Jacoby Myers potentially not playing or maybe not being 100%, they're going to need him to step up in this one. And we all know Brock Bowers is going to get a ton of attention, and so the Bucks' best cornerback is probably what Jamel Dean. So that probably be the matchup for Brock Bowers. So Trey Tucker should get an easier matchup, and he had a pretty good game against the Broncos, I thought, and obviously had the one catch for a long touchdown last week. But if Myers can't play or isn't himself, they're going to lead him to have some more volume this week. So I think that could be the X factor for the Raiders offense.
My X factor is I'm gonna go. Well, this kind of cop out, but Dale Carlson last week missed those 3 field goals, and he's been one of the better guys in the league. So I think you wonder if he can put that behind him to kind of bounce back, or for something. Who knows if get these mental hangups? But clearly, it was one of his worst games last week, and they're all from long range. They're all like 55 plus, but still, those are kicks he's made in the past. So how does he bounce back? Because you mentioned all the points are going to be definitely valuable. He needs as many points you can get. So I think he'll definitely be called upon, probably again, 3 or 4 times. So he's got to make those, give him a chance to win.
All right, I like it. A kicker as the X factor. That's first time on this pod.
First
Getting,
and
I
first and
like that.
last.
All right, just waiting for the when AJ Cole becomes the X factor
Ooh,
in the game.
that's next week.
All right, my X factor, it's going to be Sincere McCormick. This is a good run defense, but I think, like I mentioned, they play everything on one level, and if you could get past that first level, you could create some explosive runs. And it's going to make this game so much easier if you could get 2 or 3 10-plus yard runs. And those have been hard to come by for the Raiders, but I really like what I've seen from him. So I'm curious to see if you could continue that against the Bucs. All right, let's get into predictions. I'm gonna say Bucs win 28-24.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
24.
I'm put my faith that this offensive lines could figure things out a little bit and they could move the ball, but I just think ultimately this Bucs offense is just playing at too high of a level right now.
I got similar score, similar margin. I got 26-20 Bucks. I think the Raiders will hang around. I don't know if they can break through. I think the offense to me is just not able yet to score a lot of points. So I think asking for a shootout is going to be tough for this team. But I think they'll hang around. I think the defense is, you mentioned they're playing hard for Patrick Graham. He's done some nice scheming last week, especially against the Chiefs. So I think he'll have some things drawn up that will kind of slow down Baker a little bit. So I'll go 26-20 Buccaneers.
I think we all have it being somewhat of a shootout. But I think I'm gonna go with the Bucks, edging them out 31-30.
Wow.
I don't think either defense is really equipped to slow down the other right now. I know that again the Raiders they haven't scored 20 plus in a while or things of that nature, but thought they hit a groove there in the second half that we could see carry over in this game, and the Bucks defense has been pretty liable to get hit up this year. So um, I think the Raiders will have some success, but ultimately fall short and continue the tank that's not a tank.
Just say elegant tank, man. It's all right.
No, no, not saying that word no more. We're not doing
Hey,
it.
look at you, Sean Reed,
Uh,
the big Aiden O'Connell believer. 30 points. All right. I love it. All right.
well, sincere McCormick too. They got a run game now.
So we all
Say,
we all we all have the Raiders covering the spread. The spread's 6.5. So we all have the Raiders
yeah.
covering the point spread. So bet accordingly, Raider fans.
I would say the over's 46 is kind of high, but I think it'll be a high scoring game. In your eyes, McCormick's running for 100 then.
Who are you talking
How
to?
close to Sean, because he's saying 30.
Yeah, I think somewhere around there. Could
30.
get there. Why
I
not?
can see. I mean, I guess people are done with Madison, but I think he kind of earned at least a shot to play behind his own line that's kind of played together. So I think that's part of why they run the ball better. So I hate to. He's just going to be discarded, I guess. But I'm curious. I'm
Yeah.
really curious if they work him back in there or if they just go with Abdullah and McCormick because again, Amir's played well also as well. So I think he's kind of been lost in this mix here, but he's definitely earned the reps he's gotten the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've seen a lot of Alexander Madison this year. I don't really. For me, I think you just need to roll with Sincere McCormick. Maybe he's not good. We'll see. Like with more
All right.
volume, maybe the production tapers down and he can put Madison out there. But I think given the way McCormick's been rolling, I don't see why you wouldn't start the game with him at this point.
Right.
Yeah, so we have no confirmation on who the starting back is going to be. We just know the Raiders want to give more carries to McCormick.
Yeah, Pierce said more than last week, because that's the goal. But again, Madison, I don't know if he's going to be active. Then what do you do with that mix of running backs? Right, he's going to be inactive. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, McCormick's played well, so he definitely has earned more carries for sure.
I'm curious what his over under rushing yards is. All right, let's get to fan questions while Vic, could you look that up? I don't even know how to look
Go
that
ahead.
up.
I got it. Go ahead.
All right, fan questions. Is the breakout of Sincere McCormick the end of Zamir White as a Raider by Ozzie Smith?
I don't know. I mean, he's still on his rookie deal, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't see him getting cut necessarily, but I think just as even without McCormick's emergence, I think Zamir White's lack of success this season probably has nixed his opportunity to be the starting back, at least moving forward. But I think he'll still be on a roster in some capacity. But if it's not McCormick, I think they're going to be looking for a new starting running back this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, what's Damir's White contract situation like? Does he have another year on his rookie deal?
I mean, he's still on his rookie deal. It's only his second year.
Yeah, I mean, they might want to bring him
Oh, third
back
year.
as like a backup or whatever, but yeah, I mean, it's just he hasn't had success. He's fumbled the ball. I don't think he presents much as a pass protector or pass catcher. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why you would bring him back. But I mean, unless you can't find any other depth, maybe. But it's hard for me to see him coming back unless he strings together some good games. What are the most ridiculous losses we've seen in the past few seasons? Nothing this season has been as bad as losing to Jeff Saturday or Baker Mayfield 3 days after he was signed. Right? SK launch 69420. Interesting combination of numbers there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst one. It's been some really bad ones, but I think the worst one was that Colts one coming off of Jeff Saturday and Matt Ryan, old ass, running for 40 yards and losing. And I think the Raiders were a better team then than they are now. So I think it was even less excusable. So I think that's probably still takes the case as the worst Raiders loss at least since they've been in Vegas.
Yeah, I think I looked up McCormick's. I think that prop is not set yet. I think they're waiting to see what happens with Madison in terms of practice tomorrow. But those numbers don't usually come up till later in the week, so there's no prop bet available that I see. See it quite yet. As far as the bad losses, yeah, there's been so many bad ones. Just Saturday one, and think about talking about Baker Mayfield. I mean, obviously that one with the Rams is one of the worst ones we've seen in recent memory. So I think he came off the street and beat him. So I think for Antonio Pierce, we talked about he needs a couple wins the last 5 games, and even more so, I think he needs to avoid one of those really bad losses or a blowout. I think the rest of the way. So I think that's definitely something he has to really. This team is playing hard for him still. They seem to be moving in that right direction, but yeah, you can't really afford any huge setbacks or any really ugly losses in the last 5 games.
Uh, I mean, the most embarrassing loss this season, and it wasn't quite on the level as the Colts and Baker Mayfield coming off the street, was against Andy Dalton and the Panthers when they actually got ramsacked against the Panthers, who were playing really bad, and Dalton, was replacing Bryce Young. They lost 36-22, and it felt like the score was even really worse than that on the field. Um, but yeah, they not too many embarrassing losses, and this team has played hard. I mean, I don't know what the record is, but they seem like they cover cover a lot. Um, but yeah, it's elegant. We call it the elegant tank for a reason.
You love that fucking place. God damn.
I know. We need like a counter. How many times you say
I
that
need to
shit?
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
he's getting
no, I
paid
say it
for
more. I know
every
it
time he
pisses
says
you guys
elegant, he
off.
gets paid like he's got something a mechanism where ching.
Yeah, is there like a deal we don't know about? This?
No, I just like pissing you guys off. That's all.
They're not pissing us off. We're both easygoing guys. You can't piss us off, man.
All right, last question. Have you boys checked on the background source of Albert Beer's report regarding the Raiders brass have been given a mandate to draft a quarterback in the upcoming draft by Snake 81211?
I mean, I think it's just conjecture. I can't imagine Mark Davis told anyone that. I can't imagine Tom Telesco told anybody that. So if it's not coming from those two guys, it's people are just guessing. I think people are guessing about Pierce's security, guessing about what they can do in the draft. I think, and Tom's very close to the vest, as is Mark this time of year. So I mean, I'm sure Breer's got his sources. I'm sure someone told him that's what they heard, but I wouldn't put too much into it because both those guys, Mark and Tom, aren't really going to tell you right now what their draft plan is or their draft mandates, so all that kind of stuff. So I think it's all very fluid at this time of year, and I think it'll be fluid for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think if anybody's giving somebody a mandate, like maybe I don't know if you need to tell Tom Telesco that they need a quarterback.
Right.
Like I think he is aware of that fact. So For whatever it's worth, I think we all know that they need a quarterback this offseason.
Yeah, I think that the fans are giving him more of a mandate than Mark Davis will. I think they might go to his house with pitchforks if they don't draft a quarterback. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Mark Davis is that kind of owner that gives him those kind of mandates. But you
He
guys might know
definitely
better than me.
he definitely gets more involved than people think he does. I think he clearly lets his opinions be known as far as what he wants, what he thinks about draft picks, especially like when they drafted DJ Hayden, rest in peace to them. I remember he came out very quickly and like that guy's way too short. What are we doing? So I just think he's very opinionated. I think he picks his spots, but he clearly will have input before and after draft picks.
What do you say when they drafted Clelin Ferrell?
I don't know. Well, Clee, I think, was more of a. You had to really wait a while to make sure what he was going to be because he had all the traits you wanted. He had the size and the physicality and definitely was a leadership type guy. So I think with him, it took a while before you saw that he didn't have the twitch needed to be an impact guy at this level. But hey, he's become a really good pro. He's had a really good couple of years, the last few years when he's not been hurt. So, I mean, like I always say, it's not his fault he was picked so high. He's definitely been a good NFL player, just not worthy of being picked fourth overall. But I think he's a guy who will play for a while longer and be part of some winning teams. I'm sure he's definitely a good locker room guy for sure.
Yeah. So, Mark, film grinder. I didn't know he was grinding the film on the draft picks.
I'm a grinder might be a little strong. You might watch a highlight or two and like, oh, that guy's the man. But yeah, I think I mean, we talked about Henry Ruggs. That was a guy he wanted a speed guy, kind of the Cliff Branch type. I'm sure that was vocalized and that became true with him and Gruden. So yeah, he has opinions. He'll say he's not a football guy, but he knows what he wants and what he thinks the team needs, and he's not shy for sure.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Make sure you guys subscribe, hit the like button on YouTube, leave reviews, subscribe wherever you guys get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will join you guys again live after the Buccaneers game.
All right, y'all.
Hasta la
Peace.
vista.